Hi everybody, Dr. Debunk here. I'm starting part 3 of a 12 to probably 15 part series of 9 to 10 minute videos so that you can understand the events of the last 3 years with the invasion of the Martian germ. So look at part 1 and part 2 because I can't review it. Okay, let's jump in. So I left off with what happened with the first variation of the Martian and how it was killing people and what the answer was and how we didn't really get worldwide acceptance of how to treat people that were seriously ill. But let's, instead of going to the next event, which was the next variation of the Martian germ, let's talk about what they did to us starting, by May, June. Remember, they started with all the lockdowns and the restrictions, and they kept changing their mind on what we were supposed to do and not do. But by, December of 2020, it was like everybody was in a bubble wearing masks and all this stuff. And so let's talk about the truth of all that. Because, we've been treating Martian type germs for a long time. And so the mask thing started a lot of contention and a lot of investigating, like for me, because I couldn't have told you before all this, really what does a mask do and how much does it help you? Um, And so it ended up being in one of two camps. You became, believing that the mask is magical, and that's what the government and Gauci and all his little colleagues tried to say. It's magical. It'll protect you. And then the other extreme was people that were thought this whole thing was hokey, and weren't going to wear a mask. And in the beginning, I was that way. I got thrown out of stores and other places because I wasn't going to wear a mask. And I was wrong because a mask has a purpose, but not the one they were telling us. So masks are valuable for airborne infections in very particular situations. And so, um, but they are limited. So, and a mask is what I'm defining as a mask is an N95. All these other masks, the little surgical masks and all this dust masks, they're dumb, they're junk. They do a little bit. So let's talk about what a mask can do. A mask can protect you from airborne water droplets, microscopic droplets that are fairly big, that have a lot of germs in them, thousands to millions. And they will catch those if you cough. So the purpose of a mask is to protect you from other people that are coughing, or if you're coughing, then it'd be nice for you to wear a mask if you're in a store or something. um, but we're talking about the Martian in germ. You know, for the flu or colds, well, it depends where you are. But they do have a purpose. Now, will it stop the germs, the little teeny germs that cause the Martian? Not a chance. So here's complex science. This is science for you right here. See this little paper? See those fibers? Those are the fibers of an N95 mask. See the dots? Those represent 100 to 1,000 viruses. Now you tell me, how much does the mask stop? 1%? Maybe. It's a complete another fantasy to think that a mask is going to protect you from getting infected from if you're around enough of the germ load. It just doesn't. But coughing, it plays a role. But this idea that it universally will protect you, it's ridiculous. We saw from studies that nurses in the hospital would get 1 hour of protection with a face shield and an N95 mask. And then if they were treating all the patients with the Martian infection, they were going to get infected. And virtually all of them did. The only nurses, and I had plenty of them, that didn't get infected are the small amount of people that are, well, it's not that small really, that had natural immunity. They couldn't get the Martian. I have 2 nurses in my practice that they treated the wards the whole time, 2 years. They never got it. Wouldn't even wear masks in the end, if they could get away with it, because it didn't matter. Which is how it is. Everyone has different degrees of resistances to certain germs. So the masks, to clarify it, if you're going to be indoors and you have to be there for a while and you're sick and coughing, wear a mask. if you have to be there. And we're talking about small rooms. If you're in like a big store, Home Depot, Target, you can't get infected, period. You would have to let somebody who's infected with the Martian cough in your face multiple times. Are you going to really do that? Now, in a smaller room, in a house, oh yeah. If you were in a house, because all the people that were rebelling and they just kept having parties, they would, in 1 hour in a home that's closed up, you could infect every single person in there. One person who had the Martian was coughing. That was real. So you get limited protection. The face shield helps some. But in the end, it's limited. The second thing is social distancing. And that's the tool. Where do we come up with this 6-foot social distancing? It's not based on science, because I looked at all the science. Do you know that we to this day still don't know how many viruses it takes to infect you? We don't know. They've tried to do studies. They're so small, you can get a detection meter in a room and try to measure the amount of germs floating around, and it's not accurate. It's very difficult to do this. I looked for studies, and there's just not that much there to know how long you have to be in a room of what size and what kind of ventilation for a germ of any kind of germ to infect you. It's different, But where we came up with 6 feet? 100 years later, after the 1918 pandemic. That's how we knew, by figuring it out over time. And it's 6 to 10 feet, really. It just depends where you are. If you're outside, you can't get it. If you're outside, you cannot get infected unless you let someone repetitively cough in your face. Because the wind currents, even if you don't feel any wind, disperse the germs. There's just no way. It's ridiculous. So the rule is, you stay 6 feet away from people when you're indoors, if you're in public places, And so airplanes pose a problem, but we'll get to the solution to that. And so the next part of this, time goes too fast. But that's the truth about all that crap that went on. Because we're talking about contagiousness and infectiousness. So if you don't know, contagious means how easy is it for you to get a germ, for someone to infect you. Infectious means how sick does it make you. And that is so variable depending on your own immune system and life. Where are you at today? How many germs do you have to be exposed to? There's no specific way to know that because of the variations from person to person. Because one year you can be a lot more resistant than another. But in general, infectious and contagious are handled by mask wearing and distance. So I wanted to clear all that up because people are all over the map. I see these people driving around in a car with a mask. I see people that have a mask on that's so filthy, it's probably got fungus growing in it. And now they're coming back because there's a new variation of the Martian, which, by the way, can only give you a flu of 5 to 7 days. And again, this is all pertaining to healthy people. So mask wearing is a joke. If you're coughing and you have to be in a public place, out of courtesy, wear a mask. We're talking about consistent coughing. If you're just once in a while coughing, clearing your throat like we all do, clearing your throat like we all do, that doesn't mean anything. But, there is a place for them. But it's not what the extremes feel. Social distancing is the tool. So the problem then is when you can't social distance. But I spent this whole video doing this so you could have a tool that's based on real science, Because if you do social distancing, you're not going to get to a level of exposure. So the contagiousness of the germ won't affect you, because the third variation of the Martian was very interesting because it was highly contagious, but almost no infectious. It gave you a cold, and that started in 2022. But we'll get to that later. Next time, this next one is going to be back on the timeline of what happened next. Well, you know what happened next. The jab came along. The magical jab, which was the answer for all the problems of the universe. So I'm Dr. Debunk. This is part 3, and I'll see you next time.